Good Friday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com podcast with Jesse Simonton, Austin Price, and Rob Lewis. I'm Brent Hubbs. Glad to have you along with us. The Tennessee football team is a weekend of fall camp. More news than they want to have out there. Let's start with the two news items of the week, the loss of Emmett Gooden and the departure of Nathan Niehaus. Start with Gooden. And Rob, I mean, you look at it, who could they not afford to lose? I mean, this was a huge deal for Tennessee. This is a bad, unfortunate injury for Tennessee. Going to be hard. Going to be a challenge for Tracy Rocker to try to overcome this.
Yeah, I mean, stating the obvious, but I mean that's a position group I think all of us would have agreed was the biggest question mark going into fall camp, or at least 1A. And couldn't. I mean, as crazy as it is to think a guy that made one start last year was the most experienced guy coming back on the team. Jesse, I saw had the stat where nobody else is coming back even averaged 10 snaps a game last year, and I mean, that's a blow.
And Jesse, when you look at it, I mean, it's magnified by the fact that for the first 4 days we saw him out there, he looked as good as we've seen him look in terms of effort, intensity, just his physical, makeup and everything else. I mean, he was the guy who stood out before the injury.
Yeah, he was comfortable with Tracy Rocker. Rocker seemed very comfortable with him. And I had this in the what does this mean for Tennessee's piece on Thursday. He was the only guy that was assured of a starting spot. And now Tennessee has, now he is removed from that equation. Tennessee's got 10 guys to kind of mix and match, but really they only have 9 guys because we don't know about Aubrey Solomon's eligibility right now. So I do think there's promise there. I don't think this is a catastrophic deal to Tennessee's season, like if you lost Jarrett Garantano. But if you rank Tennessee's most important players, 1 through 85 or whatever, Gooden would have ranked pretty highly on that list, certainly in the top 10. And so to just remove him from the equation, I mean, it's a blow that's going to sting, and it's going to take into BYU, Florida, for Tennessee to really figure out what they have up front, in my opinion.
For anybody to jump in here,
I agree with this. I mean, it's not like a death blow would be Garantano hurt, but I mean, this is a blow just from a consistency standpoint. Now, that's not to say that Kingston Harris can't find his niche and become more consistent, kind of like Emmett Gooden started to do last year at this point, or John Mincy takes that big step in from year 1 to year 2. But I mean, it's definitely a blow up front because you feel comfortable where you're at in the back end. You know what you're getting, Batuli and DeAndre Johnson, Darrell Taylor, and some of those guys. But up front, I mean, it's a. Whew. Yeah. Well, and they may be fine, but right now we don't know. Yeah, because we're not out there.
And there was discussions on the board. Well, Tennessee didn't lose like an Outland, trophy winner
That's
or
right.
whatever. That's true. But you know what? Gooden statistically was as productive as the 3 guys they just had a year ago, and none of those 3 guys are back either.
And he really came on towards the end of last year.
Yeah, and so he had 7 tackles for loss, second on the team, as many as Kyle Phillips. Pro Football Focus ranked him, on a per snap basis as Tennessee's fourth most overall productive defensive player on the entire team. And so, as I wrote yesterday, I think this unit still has promise. I think there's a lot of intrigue surrounding Kingston Harris, surrounding Elijah Simmons. They're not going to have 600 pounds of this age beef just sitting there watching for these 2 JUCOs. But there's a lot of unanswerable questions right now as we sit 5-6 days into camp.
Is there one individual that this injury creates a better opportunity or a bigger opportunity for, or is it just whether he was hurt or not hurt, these guys have to grow up and step up in a hurry? It's just one less guy in a rotation who happens to be your most productive player coming back.
Yeah, what say you, Rob? I would say there's been no one person individually gains more. Perhaps the 2 junior college players, there's more of a seize the moment for them because again, they have to play. They weren't signed to come sit and watch. So Darrell Middleton. But a Kingston Harris and an Elijah Simmons, one could argue that they'll now get more snaps. Are they ready for more snaps? That's to be determined.
But they were all going to play anyway, right?
Everybody was going to have a chance.
You were going to rotate
6 or 7 guys. So Tracy Rocker says, again, a year ago they did not do that, but I think they were going to have to do that because they don't know is one guy better than the other guy yet because so many of them have not actually played.
Like for me,
right?
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. I mean it's almost like, I don't want to say process of elimination, but I think early on, particularly those first few ball games, you play everybody and kind of sort out, okay, here's our top 8, and we're going to try to rotate some of those. Maybe we don't rotate it in an even rotation, but we're going to play 8 deep. Now, he never got to that last year. He never even tried to get to that last year. And I think part of that's because they played West Virginia early, some early games. They were trying to get off to a good start. He never gave the Mencies a real opportunity early on. Gooden and some of those guys. They didn't play a lot of snaps early in the year. It built as the year went on a little bit, but I thought he wore those 3 starters out too much because he didn't rotate enough. I think he would like to rotate.
He admitted as much afterwards.
I think he wants to rotate more, so I don't know that one guy gains this great opportunity. I just think it's one less body.
One less body and your most consistent body. Because, I mean, you're right.
Your most proven body. I don't know that it's consistent, but at least you know what you had with him, whereas you don't know what you got with Kingston
Well, and talking
Harris.
to people in the building, that was kind of the vibe, was that you knew what you were going to get from him.
You knew his talent level was there. You wanted him to play with a more consistent effort, snap in and snap out, as you do anybody, but you knew what you were getting talent-wise there and potential production there.
Well, I'm just saying the words I was told were most consistent guy we've got in that room. So,
well, I mean, I don't disagree with that.
So my point though is like if the drop off from him to, let's say, John Mincy, Matthew Butler. I mean, to me, they're probably a little bit drop off. It's not like you're falling off a ledge though, and not in my mind. I mean,
I think it's pretty significant because I don't know what Matthew Butler's done. He's not been nearly as productive as Emmett Gooden has been in his career.
And he's played in 17 games and has like 1 tackle for loss in his career.
And look, I mean, we don't know. To me, Mincy's an unknown.
Yeah.
Athletically, he looks the part, but he's not done it against the thing. And I think we're talking about the same thing from a consistency standpoint. What you know about Gooden's lined up and been productive against other SEC opponents.
Those other guys.
Nobody else has it. Nobody else has in this room.
And the one name we have not mentioned throughout all this, and to me is the biggest wild card of the group, is Aubrey Solomon.
Yeah, it's the biggest document that's floating around out there.
And he did not have any tackles for loss a year ago at Michigan, but he does return as many as the rest of these guys combined
and he's
on
played.
Tennessee's roster, and he's played. And again, we talk about if Tennessee's going to rotate 7 to 8 guys, that means only one guy in this unit as of today, because Solomon has not gotten that green light yet. That means only one guy's not playing. Tennessee just simply now can't. They can't afford another injury there.
Right.
With Garland out, Gooden hurt, and you don't know what you're getting.
I mean, realistic
Solomon.
rotation, knowing what they rotated a year ago. I mean, don't you think if they doubled what they did a year ago, if you got to six guys that consistently played week in, week out. I mean, you're gonna have 7 and 8, 9 maybe played throughout the course of the year. But if you just got to where you got 6 guys that can, to roll out there on a given Saturday, that's probably most realistic.
Yeah, the question is, can they get these 6 guys who can be productive? And again, the elephant in the room: when are you going to know something on Aubrey Solomon? And we don't have any idea. What's interesting is, Rob, nobody's going out speaking negatively towards the NCAA or even expressing like angst about it. I mean, every time Jeremy Pruitt's asked about it, I don't know anything new.
And it's not impacting us because we rotate the same reps and all that. Yeah.
Right, but privately, it's got to be like, hey, we got to have an answer on this deal, because it was big before.
Now it's a big.
It's
monster.
now it's huge.
I mean, do we take it as a negative that there's been some news on some other guys this week and nothing on Solomon?
Well, I mean, you can float several theories out there. One,
Let's do them.
I mean, Tennessee was late getting stuff in. Jeremy Pruitt indicated in the spring that they were.
He made it sound like they had not yet sent their stuff over.
Right.
Did you not feel that way?
Yeah, that's the way he meant it. Now, I don't know that was true. Surely, if he arrived in school in January, they didn't wait until April to fill out the paperwork. But I don't know. I'm not in compliance here, and compliance is not exactly conducting a press availability on the status of that. But you wonder if they're late, if they were late getting that turned in, or I think more likely is the NCAA has come back and said we need more information. We need more documentation. We need more information on why he should be eligible immediately for his reasonings for transferring out of Michigan. We know several Michigan players have been granted immediate eligibility.
Like 4 of 7 or
A
5
couple
of 7.
have, a couple have, one has not, and a couple have not heard a result yet. Those are my two theories on what has taken
and
place.
you and I have discussed both of these off the pod at length. The third one for me would be perhaps Tennessee has received word that his appeal got denied, but they have appealed.
They're appealing
such
the
a
appeal.
decision.
Yeah.
Because of some of the other decisions that have been out there, that Tennessee's going to fight it and say, hey, again, we're just floating out theories as to why, this kid's been on campus since January and we haven't heard a peep. So.
Yeah. So we'll see, and we'll see when they get an answer or when they don't get an answer. That's obviously a lot of detail, a lot of discussion about a defensive line, but that's a very important element to the development of this football team. As you keep it on the defensive side, kind of looking at the secondary and the linebackers, I know Jeremy Pruitt was glowing in his remarks about Henry T, which jumped out at you. It's hard not to watch him and not have similar assessments. We talked about it in the 2-minute drills, first or second day we saw him, Jesse, that he does pick up things quickly. He seems very natural there. Seems like a guy who was pretty well coached in high school, pretty well developed in high school, which you would expect out of that program at De La Salle. Got a chance to make an impact and help this team at the linebacker spot.
He doesn't look like a wide-eyed freshman. And tossing the fact that he wasn't here in the spring either, it makes it, says a lot about his football IQ.
If I were Will Ignont and Shannon Reed, I'm not sure I'd rest easy, in terms of that inside spot. I'm not saying he's going to beat him out right away or anything like that, but
you got 3 non-conference games before you get to SEC play, so
he's going to get a lot of
He's going to get a lot of
opportunities.
run. Maybe he plays a bunch against BYU, but he's going to get a lot of run against Georgia State and then against Chattanooga.
Yeah, I mean, pretty clear. Jeremy pretty happy with what, I don't think that was all window dressing.
No, and I think the fact that he, explicitly noted that Henry can already make the calls.
That's pushing it.
That is pushing it, but I do think that the fact that at least he came from a very similar scheme at De La Salle, which was why Tennessee, recruited him so aggressively, anyways, because I thought that the transition would be more seamless than a guy like Crouch. I think that helps, and it's no secret that Tennessee's looking for an upgrade in athleticism at that spot, and he provides that, being 6'2", 235, that can move laterally a little better than some of the other guys they have.
In the back end, you like what they have with the 2 corners. Every time you watch that, Bryce Thompson, Alontae Taylor should be your mainstays there. Flowers, you think? Is Flowers? I don't want to say nailing this thing down a weekend of camp, but
yes,
I think he surged. After a quiet spring, it seems to me like he's gotten off to a pretty quick start.
For what we're able to see, which isn't a whole lot, when you watch him move and you watch the way he takes reps and just kind of works his way through things, to me, he's the best looking safety they got. And I like Nigel, but I just think Flowers' upside is really right now kind of untapped. So, I think that he's only going to continue to get better.
Rob, it's amazing what your body does when you focus on football for an entire year for the first time in your life.
It makes a lot of sense. When you think about it like that. And especially, probably, I would say had been in a strength and conditioning program at a very minimal rate when you're talking about all the being a baseball prospect like that. And I'm with AP. I think he just looks different athletically. He can really move, change direction. This looks explosive, and I just think the development from last year to this year is notable.
What are they going to do at nickel?
That's easily the biggest question mark outside of the defensive line for that unit, because they like what they have with Thompson and Taylor. Burrell has obviously created some early buzz. McCullough less so, but I think Tennessee still likes some options that he provides there. But that's such a critical spot. Balin Buchanan, you're no closer to knowing if he's even going to be available at all this season. But they're going to be in nickel at least 65 to 70+% of the time in the fall. So you better figure out who your best 5 or 6 defensive backs are, and maybe how that means you're going to move some guys around that we've kind of penciled into a spot, whether it's Nigel at safety or Bryce at corner. Maybe they're a guy that slides down and you bring in a Theo or a Warren Burrell.
Is Bryce to star and Warren Burrell to corner? You think that's, I don't say going to happen, but that's got some realistic vibe to it? You think?
I think it's possible. I think it's possible.
Do you think Bryce is physical enough to play there? The star and the run with what they asked
I think
him to
that's
do?
the question for sure.
And he was the one that had issues tackling a year ago. So it's a very good question too.
Yeah, I think it's all about just how physical can he be. Because, I mean, from a competitive standpoint, from
a coverage standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and just a mentality standpoint, I think he's got what you want. It's just, I mean, physically, can he hold up when, Swift's rolling down the tracks at you, or,
Considering Nigel Stonehands, I maybe would be more inclined of leaving Bryson Alante out wide, shifting Nigel down, and saying, all right, is it going to be McCullough, Theo, LaBruza, whoever, and put them back at safety with Trayvon Flowers?
Do we believe that playing safety in this defense is easier than playing the two corners or the nickel spot, given what they want those guys to be able to do?
Probably.
I mean, I don't want to say it requires less talent, but I mean, you're either a cover corner or you're not, and they want their corners to be cover guys.
And those safety spots are pretty interchangeable. Tennessee will play a little bit of strong and free, but a lot of times it's just left and right in this defense, which makes the responsibilities a little bit easier if you want to mix and match.
Be interesting to see how that.
They're deeper at safety too, which is another reason why I'd be more intrigued maybe by moving Nigel down on a more per snap basis. Now, I'm not saying he's exclusively at that spot, but on a more per snap basis. And then maybe situationally you slide Bryce inside, Nigel goes high, and that's when Warren Burrell comes on the field.
Yeah, and we know that Jeremy Pruitt's not afraid to play freshman defensive backs.
Right.
He did it at Georgia, he did it at Alabama, he did it at Florida State, he obviously did it at Tennessee last year. Burrell's intriguing. I mean, he looks better than I thought he would look. He didn't jump out to me as much, kind of early on as he has the last couple of days. But I mean, there's a lot to like about him.
He also was a guy that we saw, getting read the riot act multiple times in the spring.
Yeah, I mean, he's benefiting right now so greatly from the 15 spring practices where he got, just ripped a new one and learning on the job.
But likely they also saw the promise there.
Yeah, well,
we're trying to get him up to speed,
right.
And that's a lot of times how they try to go about it.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with that. On the flip side, on the offensive side of the ball, Austin, you and I were talking earlier before we started the podcast. There seems to be a little bit of a growing buzz about Eric Gray. I'm not declaring him anything, but it seems to be that there's a growing buzz about him being a playmaker in Jim Chaney's offense and what he's going to be able to do. It's almost like when they put pads on, he seemingly has gotten a little bit better, maybe a little bit more competitive than he was with that. Right.
Whereas when you're out there in shoulder pads, you're not even
shorts.
His greatest asset's his ability to, avoid being tackled. I mean, he's a very elusive.
And they blow that whistle quick when you have any pads on.
Yeah, correct. So I think that that the first few days of shells and then into full contact on Wednesday, he's been the guy that's kind of flashed like heavily.
Well, he's getting extra reps too. I mean, Banks missed a day and a half. There's no CFA out there. And so, I mean, he was going to be ahead of Carlin anyways, but I just think, that he's getting force-fed some reps, especially because he wasn't out there in the spring. I mean, they're trying to get, you talk about the expedited process for Warren Burrell, they're now doing that now with Eric Gray.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think that running back group, Rob, is going to be, we don't get to see them very much because we're out on the practice field and that type of thing. I don't think they're great. I don't think they have an individual that's great, but they have a collection of guys with some different skill sets that I think is going to be interesting to see how Jim Chaney kind of moves them around and what he can do with them in terms of using them as a playmaker. And I think Gray's an X factor.
I mean, I think Chandler and Jordan, to one degree or another, they proved that they can play in the SEC and be productive. I mean, I don't think either one of them got I think you have to grade them on a curve last year. The offensive line was so bad. I mean, the numbers don't look good, but I don't know how much of that was their fault. But I think Ty's really versatile. I mean, as far as being able to catch the ball in the backfield, and I'm very interested to see how much of an element Eric Gray is in that part of the game. Because I mean, just looking at him, he looks like he would be a handle.
Well, and this kind of back is the perfect back when your offensive line is not great or still trying to come along and grow. Having a guy that can make people miss and turn absolutely nothing into something, that's what Tennessee's not had. I mean, for all the love Ty gets, I mean, Jesse's pointed out numerous times. I mean, He's not a guy that's going to make.
He's not shifty.
He's not going to make 4 people miss and still be able to gain 4 yards when he should have lost 2. And that's the thing that I think Eric Gray has the potential to have.
Well, to me, the dynamic that Gray brings is that, and Chaney, again, he did this a lot at Georgia, which is you find your best playmakers and you put them on the field together. And, I mean, I've been harping, and other people have as well. I'm not, taking sole. I think Ty should get 30+% of his snaps in the slot this year. Put him in the slot. Let him be that, speed guy. Let him be the jet motion guy. Work that. Well, what does that mean? You can put a guy who's extremely dynamic in the backfield with Eric Gray as another complement, whether it's in a pass or run play, and I think it just gives Tennessee options.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I mean, I think it's going to be fascinating to see how Chaney uses them as weapons, not as running backs, not just as a slot receiver, but how he uses them as a weapon. Same thing with Dominic Wood-Anderson. Is Anderson going to line up some in the backfield? Is he going to line up out wide? You're going to line up in the slot? You're going to put him, what's Jeremy called it, the C position? I don't know what you put your hand in the ground,
right,
and play the tight end spot. I think that's the thing with Chaney is moving the parts around and not pigeonholing the guy into he's this position guy.
And I will say this, in fairness to Tyson Helton, he tried to do that with Dominic Wood-Anderson a year ago, and DWA just wasn't ready. I mean, how many times we saw it 3 straight plays, you and I commented on it in the South Carolina game, where they flexed him out wide and tried to have him basically Gronk a corner, and he and JG just weren't on the same page. Wood-Anderson wasn't ready for that kind of stuff. I think now the feeling inside the building is that he knows the offense. He's comfortable in his body. He's added some speed. So I think you're going to see them do that again and maybe move him around a little bit more.
And you add all that in, and you talk about Gray and Banks and Jordan and Chandler, and it just goes back to even validating it more that, what's the over-under for, leading rusher on this team? I mean, whatever it is. I mean, I just think you're likely to be the under, because I think there's going to be games where Ty Chandler may have a huge game, and then next game it could be Tim Jordan. I just think that because of the number of bodies that are, similar in certain ways, that I think Tennessee's going to find ways to get these different playmakers the ball, and that goes back to Chaney's kind of expertise.
Well, it's what you're paying him $1.5 million to do. He better find a way to get those guys the ball. His challenge, though, is going to be how do you handle up front?
Yeah,
and what do you do? What are you going to do up front? Nathan Niehaus has left the team. I don't know that Nathan was going to be a starter. I don't think any of us thought he was going to be a starter, but he was going to be quality depth.
No one thought he was going to play a year ago. He started 4 or 5 games.
Well, and a year ago there was a lot of talk that, because of the
concussions,
all that stuff, that he was going to retire and not even be a part of last year's team. Well, he's retired now. He's not going to play and not going to play anywhere. And so I just wonder, he's one of those candidates, kind of like Marcus Tatum was, that they threw 60 pounds on. I just wonder if the wear and tear on the body and then just the want to.
I think the want to is I think it's a fair point for the want to, and I think your point is well made about adding the weight. But even before he got the weight to where it needed to be, he had to go play some. And he played him when he wasn't ready, and even not even necessarily in a game, but he goes to the practice field, 60 pounds light, and they got him out there running second team, against Shy Tuttle or whoever. I mean, he just got the crap beat out of him all the time when he wasn't physically ready. I mean, he would have been a classic candidate for a JV football team if you had that at the college level, because he just wasn't ready to play, but physically, and I think it's worn him out. The question now becomes, not that he's this significant loss other than a body that's played and has some experience. What is this line going to look like? I mean, I know we got 2 weeks, 3 weeks before they play a game, whatever, we get there. How do you see this thing starting to shake itself out as they move into the second full week and now that you're in full
what
gear?
What happens at right tackle is kind of going to, don't you think, maybe the biggest question right now?
Yeah, I think right now it's going to be
left
Marcus.
guard. We don't know about Trey.
Well, I'm assuming Trey's good to go.
I think Marcus Tatum's going to be the starting right tackle against Georgia State. Now, how long can he hold Darnell off? Because it's pretty evident when you listen to coaches or you talk to coaches that, each day Darnell gets a little bit better. I mean, he's still learning his left from his right when it comes to practice in college and all that stuff and the offense and everything. But, when he knows what he's doing, he's really, really good. So how quick can he come up to speed to where he's not a liability, part of the time when he's out there? To me, that's the big, because eventually talent's going to take over.
All right, so you got him there. Right guard? Carvin?
No,
I mean not
Calvert.
Calvert.
Yep.
Calvert, if he can stay healthy.
And I think that's the crash course with him is get him to be more consistent. That's why you hear Jimmy Pruitt talk about that on Wednesday.
Well, if Karon Calvert didn't hear the need to be consistent, he had earplugs in because Jim Chaney was laying into that right side on the practice field
Wednesday
this
was
week.
The most I've seen him get after the offensive line. I mean, back in the spring.
Yeah, he was into it, but I think that clearly Chaney and Pruitt really like the physicality part that Karon brings, and the question is, can he be consistent as you mentioned? Center spot, we've all assumed Brandon Kennedy. Is that going to be Kennedy?
I still think so. I'm never one to get too worked up about what we see out there during our time because you know as well as I do. When we walk away, they shuffle stuff around.
Well, a lot of times that's for show to move somebody around to try to motivate a guy.
Yeah.
So let's give this guy first team reps while the media's
Sure
not
it
here,
is.
so they'll write about it.
I still think the best. If it ain't going to be Brandon Kennedy, I think their best center is Jerome Carvin, but that's just my opinion.
I just don't know if Carvin's ready to make calls and do all the things that you need him to do. I think there's a big question mark with Carvin up there, at this point in time. Jameer Johnson's kind of been a guy nobody's talked about a whole lot.
I think it's going to be he will play left guard if Trey is not ready, and then if Trey is available, I think it's him and Wanye. It's going to be kind of a coin flip decision that week one against Georgia State.
Probably play both of them.
Probably play both. I wouldn't be surprised if you give the freshman the start.
A token start and Jameer plays.
Yeah, we all know. I mean, it's part of the
Watch Derek Berry get a start. He played the first snap at Cal, then came off the field.
Great move by Chief.
But hey, you got to say you started him, right?
Bryce Brown scoring the first touchdown.
That's right. Whatever was taken care of in the recruiting process, right? That's unfortunately part of it. So
I personally worry about Jameer. Like if Jameer Johnson does not start on this football team, where does he mentally go? I mean, I think I'm not saying he's going to become a cancer, but does mentally he go in the tank a little bit if he's not playing? Whereas like I think if Marcus Tatum doesn't play, he spent most of his time here not playing, and so like I think he would be disappointed, but like I think he would be a good soldier, good teammate, and just stay ready. Whereas I just don't know if Jameer came in last year and they played him at 255 pounds, 260,
right?
Way undersized at guard, So I mean, like I think in his mind, he's definitely starting this year. So if he doesn't, mentally, where does he go?
Well, and I mean, a lot of that's going to depend on what happens with Trey, and we'll see. I mean, they're certainly building slow with Trey, as we thought they would.
If Trey Smith's going to play, Trey Smith will be participating in the second and or third scrimmage. There's no way that he goes no contact all of fall camp and then goes out there for contact against Georgia State. I don't see there's no way in the world that happens. I think that there's got to be some kind of period where he does go contact and then
see how everything reacts.
Yep.
Right? Yeah, yep. I agree. I mean, I think the plan has been all along to test it earlier camp than they did a year ago in camp.
Because it's kind of like how do you phrase this? You can kind of control the environment in a practice that has him getting thudded or getting contact. In a game, you can't control that environment. It kind of is what it is. When the ball's snapped, whatever happens, happens. In a practice, you can be 4 feet away and blow the whistle if something starts to go awry.
Right.
So like that's what I'm saying. Like if he's not cleared for contact or practicing with contact and playing in these scrimmages by scrimmage 2, scrimmage 3. Then all of a sudden I think the real doubt does creep in.
Yeah.
As of right now, though, I still think the plan is for that to happen.
So lots of some competition sorting out to go certainly at that offensive line position. Something to watch going into next week as we wrap it up here on football, and we'll get to a couple other things right quick. But as we wrap it up on football here, biggest question you think needs to be addressed or sort of working towards an answer next week as they move into week 2? What's the biggest question? We know the bodies they have on the defensive line. Is there another question defensively that you think that's the most pressing thing that is at the top of the list?
I don't think anything comes close.
Just the defensive line.
Both lines of scrimmage.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's going to be the answer every week,
sure.
right?
But I think what happens after that? What are they scrimmaging Sunday? Is that or one of the days up here coming up soon? I mean, I think. Whenever they hold that first scrimmage, I think what happens at that star spot whether it's positive or negative, is going to dictate maybe what they do, moving pieces around in the secondary.
We'll see what happens this weekend. Tennessee's on the practice field Saturday. We'll see what Jeremy Pruitt has to say after that practice on Saturday. We'll have full coverage of that, and obviously continued coverage of fall camp throughout the weekend heading into next week with the podcast coming up on Monday. Rob, no surprise Tennessee gets Keon Johnson. Everybody kind of saw that one coming, and so it didn't have a ton of drama in it. But for Rick Barnes and his staff, great get, continued momentum for them. All focus now is on Springer and Jade Springer and really P.J. Hall. But this is kind of what this staff has been building for, is to recruit at this level, and to secure one in a state like this is huge.
Sure. I mean, in the way that he played to close the summer out at an event like the USA, basketball training camp at the Olympic facility in front of the kind of people that he did, to be named one of the top 5 players in that camp. I mean, that's McDonald's All-American stuff. I mean, I'm talking with people this week. You'd think that it's, I don't know about, I'm not going to guarantee anything, but good chance that he's on that team. Talking to Eric Bossi, our national guy, I think Bossi's going to make him a 5-star. That's going to give Tennessee 2 5-stars in this class, 3 in the last 2 classes, and the possibility of landing Jaden Springer, who'd be the highest ranked guy of all of them. I mean, they're rolling.
Yeah,
there's no way to say it.
And they're heavy in the Springer deal.
Very much
look,
so.
North Carolina's going to be in it, I think. I don't think he's going to come out.
Memphis is pushing hard, and you can't ignore Penny Hardaway and the kind of pull that he has with what he's done. But
do you think that Walker and Keon kind of work as a tandem? The way I thought that some of these in-state kids were doing football this year. Do you think that they really? Can they have that kind of impact on Springer?
I don't know how what kind of
they know him well enough.
But they know him. I mean, Keon and him have played together at some camps, and I asked Keon about it specifically the other night. He is talking with Jaden. I think there's a good chance that Tennessee brings all 3 of those guys
in on the same weekend.
On the same weekend. I mean, you wouldn't normally want to do that with prospects, but you don't have to babysit Walker and Keon, and sell them on anything. I mean, they're in the boat, so I think there's a really good chance that you see all 3 of those guys here for the Georgia game on official visits, and I mean, they're working on Springer hard.
And they'll take 4?
I think so.
They'll find a way to take 4?
Well, I mean,
at this point, I take every big stud you can get. Wouldn't you?
Whether they do that,
cut them later.
Whether they do that, I would too. Even if they don't end up with 4 in November, I think that you'll see them taking up somebody in the spring. But talking with people around the program, the only downside is if you take 4, I think what Tennessee worries about is all the media speculation about who's getting cut. Whereas my thing is, the way kids move these days, I think you should take. I think you should almost always oversign by 1 or 2. I mean, Tennessee's had a kid leave the program every year since Rick's been here, and not just Tennessee. I mean, everybody in college basketball.
Yeah.
I mean, kids move all the time.
It's just hard. I mean, you're not going to tell P.J. Hall.
I don't think you're telling P.J. Hall no.
And if he comes and Springer wants in, you're certainly not going to tell Springer
so,
no.
It's like right now, you got Tennessee's got football team's got 3 or 4 receivers committed. You only want to take a certain amount, but like if Rakim Jarrett wants to come and Eric Gilbert wants to come,
you're not going to turn down a difference maker.
So,
yeah, correct.
Short answer: I think that Tennessee will oversign by 1 if that 1 is P.J. Hall and he wants in the boat, or if the Cam Hayes kid, who's a top 20 prospect in the junior class right now, reclassifies and decides he wants to sign early. I think the good thing with Hayes is that I don't think he'll make that decision until the spring.
Okay.
So I think that would that would help Tennessee stay in it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens with Springer and kind of how things progress this fall. We'll have plenty more coming up on basketball in the coming weeks as they get back into classes and get settled in. But obviously, everybody's focus right now is on football. Football recruiting, as we've mentioned, is quiet. We'll have more on that on Monday in our podcast. We'll talk a little more recruiting there. But that's going to do it for this Friday edition of the Volquest.com podcast. For Jesse Simonton, Austin Price, and Rob Lewis, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend. And don't forget, we've got coverage throughout the weekend of Tennessee and fall camp with the football team.